Well, this is Baruch Fleischman, and I'm on the road today in Central Florida on business. I get up, we come over here and get the day started with the ultimate connection with God, seven-step guide to Jewish spirituality, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Mimran. Rabbi Mimran, we're using him as a guide to begin the day of learning. Here we're talking about really learning how to be connected to God, actually have an experience of oneness with Hashem. So here's introduction number 2. And Rabbi Mimran writes, B'nai Nevi'im, the school of the prophets, the commandments of the Bekas Hashem, bonding to the Creator, enables an individual to develop the proper spiritual skills and practices in order to have a direct personal spiritual encounter and experience with our blessed Creator. In other words, we experience infinity. The methods and manners of such spiritual skills have long been an integral part of traditional Torah learning and performing the necessary mitzvahs. Throughout the centuries, literally since the day of Moshe Rabbeinu himself, prophecy and later Ruach HaKodesh was a daily spiritual occurrence. Even today, we have those spiritually focused souls who are inspired with the divine impression, enabling them to be in the presence of the divine. Now, when we say, his phrase, which he says, focused souls who are inspired with a divine impression. Now, the word impression in Hebrew, I think, is the word rishimo, which means that there is always a deposit of infinity within us, and that divine impression is impressed there. An important point should be mentioned that most people are not usually gifted to be in contact with the spiritual world. In the olden days, one had the opportunity to attend special schools established exclusively for this purpose, to excel in this domain, since this could not be achieved on one's own merit. These schools of the prophet and the students were called the B'nai Nevi'im, the sons of the prophet, since a student is always considered as dear to the teachers as his own children, so it's like they are a child of that teacher. In other words, one who sought to bond with Hashem and experience the divine presence had to join a school of fellow colleagues who, under the direction of the experienced master prophet, let me see if I can get this down, we can see it better, under the experience of the master prophet, trained novices in the art of spiritual realities and the methods and techniques used to experience them. This prophetic training program required the beginner prophet to adopt a rigorous set of training rules aimed at reorienting his mind and his consciousness to cultivate within him the sensitivity of subtle spiritual realities unseen and unknown by the common person. Trainees were trained in the science of consciousness and manipulations. They cultivated an awareness of the subtle nuances of the spiritual forces that underlie physical forms that cause the flow of all things here on earth. Now, Rabbi Mimran is saying there is a flow from within us and from without us that is coming from the Ein Sof Baruch. What we want is for this to continue and to grow and get more and more of an attachment. In reality, the student prophet had to learn to experience an alternative reality existing side by side with this, our world. The passageway was not via some external means, but rather through a secret inner passage through the inner recesses of the mind. With a lot of practice and patience, the student would be able to transcend the realm of the inner mind until eventually achieving an experience of the outermost limits that the human consciousness can perceive. At this junction is where the student would have a transcendent spiritual experience. So he's saying there is an interface that we can find our way past the physical world into the spiritual world and connect with the ultimate truth. With the direct destruction of the first holy temple many thousands of years ago, the age of prophecy ended. Nevertheless, a lower level of spiritual enlightenment was and is still available. This is called Ruach HaKodesh. Since the days of the Holy Temple, aspiring students of prophecy has never been dissuaded from the lower forms and levels of accomplishments that the epoch of the exile had brought upon the Jewish people. The prophetic were nevertheless transmitted through the ages until today by a small circle of spiritual seekers. So you see that the number of people who are capable of learning Torah and the number of people who are actually engaged in these spiritual connections, well, is a very small group. The method and techniques used to expand human consciousness, enabling it to experience and embrace spirituality, have been well preserved in Torah literature. These techniques and their practices are considered vital because only they enable one to fulfill the important biblical commandment. He said this is a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa of Devekis, bonding with Hashem. That's the shir today. This is Baruch Fleischman, and this is the morning meditation with Rabbi Mimran. And let's finish off with a little picture of Rabbi Mimran as he appeared at the time of the writing of this book. And he's a man that flies around. This is Baruch Fleischman.